So I'd like to begin by wishing everyone good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day or night it happens to be for you listening to this. And we will begin as usual by reciting the prayers for going for refuge and rousing Bodhichitta. So I'd like to ask you to please recite these prayers with great faith and devotion in the Buddhas, the Dharma, the Sangha, thinking that it's only by going to them for refuge that we can find relief and find freedom from the suffering of samsara. And then once we have done that, only once we have done that can we really bring all other sentient beings to the state of Buddhahood. So please think to yourself that we are going for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha in order to bring all of our mothers, all sentient beings to the state of Buddhahood. So as we do so, as thinking in this way, please let's recite these words together. O sangye chedan soge chodam la chancho bardo dane chapsum che dage chenyen gibe sunam ji Drola penjer sanje drobar sho sangye chedang soge chonam la chancho bardo dane chapsum chi dage chenyen gibe sunam ji drola penjer Sanje Drobar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Bardo Dane Chapsum Chi Dagi Chenyen Gibe Senam Gidola Penjer Sanje Drobar Sho Until enlightenment I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and the sublime Sangha. By the merit of my listening to the Dharma, may I reach Buddhahood to benefit beings. Until enlightenment I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and the sublime Sangha. By the merit of my listening to the Dharma, may I reach Buddhahood to benefit beings. Until enlightenment I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and the sublime Sangha. By the merit of my listening to the Dharma, may I reach Buddhahood to benefit beings. Semje tamje dewa dan dewe judan dambari juji donga dan donga ji judan rawa juji donga mebe dewa tamba tam indrawa juji nyerin shadan ditan rawe anyon shambhala nebra juji. May all sentient beings be happy and of the causes of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be parted from the highest joy, which is free of suffering. May they dwell in the great equanimity, free of attachment or hatred for those near or far. In the Dharma expanse palace of Akanishta is the essence of all Buddhas of the three times, who shows me directly my mind is Dharmakaya. I prostrate to the glorious exalted gurus. Please bless me and all sentient beings, that our minds become the Dharma. Please bless us that the Dharma become the path. Please bless us that the path dispel confusion. Please bless us that confusion arise as wisdom. And so now please think to yourselves that we must bring all of our mothers, all sentient beings throughout space, to the state of completely perfect Buddhahood. And in order to bring them to Buddhahood, we need to achieve the state of Buddhahood ourselves. And so please listen this morning with this motivation of wanting to bring all sentient beings lasting happiness and freedom from suffering. The Dharma that we are listening to is the Treasury of Abhidharma by Vasubandhu, as explained by the 9th Karmapa Wangchuk Dorje in his treatise Youthful Play. And of the 8 chapters of the Treasury, we are speaking about the 7th, the teachings on wisdom. This chapter on the teachings on wisdom has 4 main parts: the knowings, the explanation of possession, how the knowings are attained, and the 4th, how the qualities of the knowings. So in the past week or so, we've been through the first 3 topics, and we're speaking about the 4th topic, the qualities of the knowings, and this has the sections on the unshared qualities of a Buddha, the 18 unshared qualities, and then also the shared qualities. And the shared qualities, to put it briefly, there are qualities that are shared with other noble beings that we spoke about in the last 2 classes, and we are now today speaking about those shared with other sentient beings, which are common to both noble and ordinary individuals, which is basically the 6 clairvoyances. And so there are the sections on the distinctions of their qualities and understanding their features. And so we've been through the distinctions of their qualities. What are the 6 clairvoyances? And now we're talking about understanding their features. And there's a general, for the understanding their features, there's a general understanding their common features and understanding their particular features. And so now we have come to the portion on understanding their particular features, which is on page 532 of the book. So that is what do we say? That is where we are in the text. And so we'll be speaking again about the clairvoyances. And of course, when we think about the clairvoyances, it's either we might have either one of 2 reactions. We might have both of those reactions. I think that would be common among those of us who've had secular education, a secular background. Your first might be disbelief. How can this happen? This is just one of those myths that comes up in Buddhism. And so this is a common happening. We just don't believe it because we don't see it with our own eyes. And so if we don't see something with our own eyes, we don't believe it. So if seeing is believing, then not seeing is disbelieving. But that's actually not necessarily good proof of the absence of anything. In fact, all it can do is say that you can't prove that there's anything perceivable in front of you. It doesn't actually prove non-existence, the fact that you can't see something. For example, we cannot see dark matter, and yet physicists are completely taken with the idea that there must be dark matter. As a matter of fact, we can't perceive dark matter, and so therefore we have difficulty proving it one way or the other, unless they figure out some clever way to measure it. It's similar with the clairvoyances. We don't see them directly in front of us, and so you must think they can't be. We've never seen anyone do this. But that doesn't mean that they don't exist. And that doesn't mean that they don't happen. It means that if you are going to take a scientific approach to it, the Western secular scientific approach, we think of science and technology as being important in the secular society. And so if we're going to take a scientific approach, then you need to approach it scientifically and say that actually, we haven't figured it out yet. We don't know. We can't say yes, we can't say no. That's a reasonable position from a scientific perspective. And also it's a reasonable position from the perspective of a practitioner. Say, I don't know. It's entirely reasonable to say, I'm not sure. I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not going to say yes. I'm not going to do either. I'm going to leave it alone until I come to know more about it. So I think that's a very, if you are someone who naturally has skepticism about these and just kind of rolling your eyes and talking about, oh, come on, clairvoyances, give me a break. That's so 19th century spiritualism, and those 19th century spiritualists all faked it. They must have been faking it back at the time of the Buddha too. Either that or it's just myth. If you're thinking in that way, that it's just faking it, then what that's called is, well, that's skeptic. Well, in English, we'd say skepticism. I'm not sure that skepticism is always the best approach. I mean, it's good to kind of be not to take things for granted, but it's skepticism where you're criticizing it. And we call this doubt that tends towards the mistruth. But of course, when you say it's or the untruth, but when you say that, you're assuming that you, or towards reality, doubt that is skeptical of reality. You can have doubt that is leaning towards reality, or what is real, or doubt that is leaning towards what is not real. But of course, by just saying that, we're already kind of saying what we think the result is. So really the best thing to do is just to be, what do we say? We'll leave it open. When we leave it open, then that gives us a chance. Now, it's quite possible that if we leave it a chance, that in the future we might come to some sort of a real conviction that no, there aren't clairvoyant powers, anything like that. We might say, well, actually, maybe there are. And so right now, but if you leave it open, there's an opportunity for that. The other thing that I think is really important is that often what happens is that when we come to Buddhism, we often bring a lot of preconceptions and ideas that we don't realize are there. Societal, cultural, from our backgrounds that come up, and they actually come up. So when we're talking about things like skepticism about rebirth, skepticism about clairvoyances, these are often societal sort of things. You know, if you're raised in a secular environment and everyone is skeptical, then you also are going to naturally be more likely to be skeptical of them. That's how it goes. And so when we just say it can't be, without really examining it, we're not examining our own sort of cultural and societal, what our own preconceptions are. We're not looking at what the ideas that we have from before that we don't even realize that they're preconceptions. And this is kind of a surface level, but it actually comes to something that is also important in our practice, because I think there are points when you're doing practice where you actually come up with against your own expectations. Your expectations about how people should relate, especially when you're relating with people from different cultures. If you're relating, as many of us, here in the Trungpa Monastery in Canada, we have Tibetans. We have in the monastery, we have Nepalis in the monastery. We have a lot of students in the area are of Chinese descent, and we have a number of students from Western descent, and so we're all kind of coming together, and so that there are these preconceptions that come towards each other. So that's one area where our preconceptions come up in our, so that's sort of our post-meditation practice. But even in our meditation practice, we come up against our preconceptions in ways that we don't realize they are. And if you don't realize that you're coming up against a preconception, then it's easy to head you off in a wrong way following that preconceived idea. That idea that you have, that's a belief of your own. And when that happens, then it's hard to actually really practice the Dharma on its own terms. So when we, on this, and that's talking about things on a kind of subtle level, and those are going to come up personally, so there's no need to really go into detail on them. But if we take like an example of this idea of the clairvoyances, we say they can't be, but I'm going to practice meditation anyways. Well, you're kind of cutting off, if you haven't really gone through the analysis, you're kind of cutting off a whole area of this. And now this is the clairvoyances are kind of a secondary aspect of Buddhism. It's not like, the most important thing that you could kind of cut yourself off of. But when you start doing that, it's difficult. It's difficult to actually get down to saying, what is the Dharma? What really did the Buddha teach? And so instead of looking at what the tradition, what's passed down, and then really looking at yourself and seeing what's possible, You look at kind of textual analysis and engage and start engaging everything skeptically, and then that kind of makes it hard. So the end result is the danger that we have with Buddhism, and that I think is probably more likely than not, is that Buddhism is going to kind of fall to when it gets transferred into the West, and particularly into America, where this is in the United States, where this is a really common thing. It's going to have the same fate as happened to yoga. So yoga is a really rich tradition, which includes the hatha yoga, all the exercises, but it also includes a lot of other stuff, and all that other stuff doesn't fit with with Westerners' preconceived notions. And so when you bring yoga into Western society, what happens is that now yoga is basically a form of physical exercise. And the best place to go learn about, or not the best place, but one of the most common places to go learn about yoga is like a fitness app on your phone. And it's listed as a fitness app. It's not listed as a spiritual tradition, which actually began as. And so likewise, what's happening to Buddhism is that it gets into the American culture, and people talk about, being interested in Buddhism and so forth, but they only want to take the parts of Buddhism that kind of fit, that don't challenge their ideas, that don't make them really consider themselves. So they want to take the things that are going to help them feel better, that are going to help them, the things that are going to help them have less stress in their lifestyle. And so what's happened is that the most common form of Buddhism that we get in the United States is along the lines of mindfulness-based stress reduction. Now, is mindfulness-based stress reduction beneficial? Absolutely. It's really helpful. It really brings great help to a lot of people. But is it Buddhism? That's a good question. Probably not. I mean, the specific meditation techniques that it teaches are not necessarily, well, I guess they are. They're based on the 4 foundations of mindfulness and so forth. But, it's not like, that's not what makes it Buddhism. What makes something Buddhism is when you have the understanding. And then you're working with the motivation of wanting to achieve liberation. That's what makes it Buddhism. And otherwise, what we're going to do is we're just going to make it into something that, you go to a meditation class just like you go to a yoga class, and just like you go and lift weights or go out on your afternoon jog. And in that way, it'll be called with the name Buddhism, but it's not actually really doing what we need Buddhist practice to do. So this is a great danger that we face in the West. I mean, for many years, people have been talking about wanting to have American Buddhism, and I have the hunch that what really people want is to take everything out of Buddha, to take only the parts of Buddhism that match what makes them feel good now, and leave apart all the things that challenge them and challenge their preconceived ideas on a deep level. And then what's going to happen is that Buddhism is, going to be just another stress reduction thing, and it's going to be kind of the equivalent of going for a sauna or going for a massage. Temporary help, beneficial, absolutely. Good for you, yes. No doubt about that. Some people find them extremely helpful in the course of this life, but are they going to bring you to liberation? And what's going to happen to you when you die? So that's something that we need to keep in mind. So I don't need to, pontificate for too long. I think I probably need to move on to the text, or, well, we'll never finish it. Well, we'll finish it actually, but it'll take longer. So to move on to the text, we are on page 532 of the book, but to show it on the screen. So we are in the middle of the screen here. In the middle it says the topic 2, understanding their particular features, that is of the clairvoyance. This is 3 topics: understanding the clairvoyance of magic, understanding the clairvoyance of eye and ear, that is the divine eye and the divine ear, and understanding the natures of those attained by birth, etc. So understanding the natures of the clairvoyance of magic has 5 topics. The first is magic's features. The second is identifying the mind of emanation. Third is how that emanates. The fourth is the essence of the mind of emanation, and the fifth is the classifications of magic. So if you're wondering what this mind of emanation is and sounds crazy to you, well, just wait a minute. It'll make more sense in a moment. So the features of magic are discussed here on the top of page 533 of the book. There are two topics: the general explanation of magic and its actual features. The magical is samadhi, motion, and emanations are from that. So basically, when we're talking about the type of magical, or as Ian Cochrane translates, it's the supernatural, there are two types. There being able to move miraculously, either very quickly or instantaneously, and also the ability to make emanations. So those are the two types of magic. But it says here that the magical is, the clairvoyance of magic is samadhi. So what does this mean? As it says in the commentary, what is the essence of magical clairvoyance, you say? The essence of magical clairvoyance is samadhi, because that is what creates it. And here, actually, the antecedent is a little unclear. What creates it, that means the magic. So in other words, you're in dhyana, and then you're on the, you're resting in dhyana meditation, and then you want to make an emanation or do movement, you enter the clairvoyant mind of the magic. And that clairvoyant mind of magic then either makes emanations or, well, through emanations is kind of another step. So that clairvoyance, you're in that clairvoyant state, and then from that clairvoyant state, you either move or you create emanations. So what is created? What is the magic? What is the supernatural thing that is created? There are two types of here. There's motion and emanation. So the motions are three types, and the three types of motions are motion through the body, motion through interest, and motion through mental speed. So motion through the body is basically moving your body in order to propel yourself very quickly. The second, interest, is imagining that the place is closer than, or thinking of it as closer, and through the power of your clairvoyance, you're then able to travel there much more quickly. And mental speed is moving there just merely by thinking. And the second type is the emanations that did not previously exist. That means you're creating something new, and it's created from that samadhi, from that clairvoyance of magic. So the actual features has two parts, two topics, and the first is the distinctions between the three motions, and the second is distinction of the two emanations. So the teacher moves with mental speed, others propulsion and interest. So we talked about the three types of clairvoyances. The teacher, the Buddha, has mental speed. Others can move through propulsion or through interest. So the teacher, the Buddha, moves with mental speed because he can go long distances merely by thinking. In other words, the Buddha thinks, I want to go to Shravasti, and he's there. I want to go to the realm of the 33 to teach the Dharma to my mother, and he goes there. So that's one way. He also sometimes, I think, moved by the other types of clairvoyance, but generally he can move by mental speed, and that's what he can do. Others cannot do this. Those other than the Buddha have motion through bodily propulsion because their body propels them like birds. Now, this is not an Abhidharma example, but it's like Milarepa, who decided to fly from one side of the valley to the other, flying across and flying back. So that's through the bodily propulsion. Their body propels them like birds. I'm not sure that it necessarily means that you need to flap your arms, but I think it's something about how you do it. Of course, we have to develop this clairvoyance, and then we'd know. Now, the other thing is that they have the motion of interest, because imagining what is far to be close, they can go there quickly. For example, when Rechungpa, Milarepa had said, you have to be back here by this date. And Rechungpa was off doing whatever, a couple months travel away. And that date came, and he realized, oh no, I'm supposed to be back there. Then he realized, oh no, the master has died. And when he realized that, then he traveled two months travel distance in one morning. This is the story from the Tibetan tradition. So that's sort of what we're talking about by imagining his strong longing, wanting to go there, and he went there really quickly. The distinctions of the two emanations. And he didn't fly, he just walked, but I mean, he must have been a very quick walk. So the distinctions of the two emanations, this has 2 points. The emanations that act in desire, these are, in desire, emanations are 4 external sense bases twofold. So they're the 4 external sense bases, and there are 2 types of them. So to read this in the commentary, in general, there are 2 types of emanation, of mind of emanation. Emanations of desire and emanations of form. So here we have this term, mind of emanation. So what we mean by a mind of emanation is that you are in the clairvoyance of magic, in that samadhi. And then you create a mind of emanate. You can do the emanations in one of 2 ways. You can either go straight from that clairvoyance into making an emanation, or you can go into what's called a mind of emanation and then create the emanation. And I think especially for beginners that you need to go through that state of the mind of emanation that then actually creates the emanation. So there are emanations in the desire realm and those in the form realm. Of these, that is, of the ones in desire and form realm, in the desire realm, emanations are the 4 external sense bases of form, scent, taste, and touch by nature. So that is their nature. They're not sound because sound is like it's transient. It's not really anything's nature. So when you are emanating yourself as a mouse, the nature of that mouse is the external sense bases of form, scent, taste, and touch. So they are twofold. They're connected to one's own being or connected to another being. So when you are doing one that's connected to your own being, what that means is that you go from the samadhi of clairvoyance into the mind of emanation, then you emanate yourself as a mouse in the desire realm, and you skitter about and squeak or do whatever you do as a mouse. That's changing your own body into something else, in other words. Connected to another being would be if you then create another mouse. If you emanate a mouse that is separate from you, so there's you and there's the mouse. So that's not connected to your own being. So there are these 2 types, connected to your own being. In other words, transforming your own body. That's kind of the colloquial way of putting it. And then connected to another being, which is basically making a new one. So those are the types of emanations in desire. They're the 4 external sense bases. And the emanations that act in form, because in form there is neither scent nor taste. Excuse me, I didn't read the root, did I? I should read the root. In form 2. In form there are only 2 of the sense bases. Because in form there is neither scent nor taste. Emanations in form are the 2 sense bases of form and touch. So basically in the form realm, there's not any desire for food, and so therefore there is no scent or taste. That is why there are no emanations that have sense or tastes in the form realm. Now, these emanations in the form realm, these can also be connected to one's own or another's body. So you can emanate a form realm being, or you can emanate yourself as a different form realm being, or you can emanate a separate form realm being. So that's the basic of emanation, or the basic 2 types of emanations. So now we're going to talk about the identifying the mind of emanation. So this is the mind that comes out of the samadhi, and there are 4 types. What emanates, the classifications of the minds of emanation, what it is acquired through, and what arises from which. So what emanations arise from which minds? So what emanates as minds of emanation create them too. So the question is here, is it only the clairvoyance, that is the actual samadhi of clairvoyance? Is that the only thing that creates emanations? You ask, and the answer is no. The result of clairvoyance, the mind of emanation, creates them, that is, emanations too. In other words, you can create the emanation from your clairvoyance directly, or you can go from clairvoyance into a mind of emanation and then create an emanation. There are these 2 ways. Now, with the mind of emanations, this being the Abhidharma, we have to classify them. So the next is the classifications of the mind of Abhidharma, and we are classifying them according to their level. These are 14 results of jhana respectively. So these, that is, the minds of emanation, there are 14 of them, and they are all results of jhana. So the clairvoyance is on the level of jhana, and it produces a mind of emanation. They're from 2 to 5, not lower as a result. This from 2 to 5, so each level can produce a different number of them. And so on the first jhana, you can produce 2 minds of emanation. On the fourth jhana, you can produce 5. We'll go into the details in a moment. But you cannot produce, they're not the lower as a result, you cannot produce the mind of emanation of a higher level. You can only produce the mind of emanation of your own or a lower level. So these minds of emanation are also 14. So what are the 14, you ask? The results of the levels of dhyana respectively. So the results are on the levels of dhyana. They're the results of the levels of dhyana. So when, from the first dhyana, there are 2 minds of emanation. In other words, when you're on the clairvoyance, you're in the first jhana, you enter the samadhi of clairvoyance, and you create a mind of emanation. You can do one of 2. You can either make an emanation on the level of desire, that is on the lower level, or you can do it on the first jhana, your own same level. So that means 2 on the first jhana. Then on the second level, say you're on this in the meditation of the second jhana, you want to emanate, make a mind of emanation. You've got 3 choices. You can either do it; those are the 2 lower levels, or its own levels. That is, the results of the second jhana are 3. Those are the 2 lower levels in its own level. So you can do one in desire, you can do one on the first jhana, those are on the lower levels, or you can do it on its own level on the second jhana. And this continues up to the fourth jhana, which has 5, the 4 levels in its own in succession. So on the third jhana, you'd be able to do 4, because you could do desire in the first, second, and third jhana. And then on the fourth jhana, you have 5, because you can do desire in each of the 4 levels of jhana, right? So that's pretty simple. It's just numbers. That's why it says 14, right? Because we have 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 equals what? 14. Excellent. You guys got to pass your math class for today. There is nothing. Here there is something. Excuse me. No, I'm thinking. I'm speaking before I'm thinking. Here there is something that must be known, it says in the commentary. Emanating an object in desire is the action of the emanating mind of desire. But that emanating mind itself is contained within the levels of jhana. So you make an emanating mind of desire that can emanate in desire, but it itself is on the level of jhana. So you're on the first level, you want to emanate a mouse in the desire realm. Well, then you make that mind of desire, that mind of emanation of desire, but it's on the first jhana, but it can emanate into the realm of desire. Therefore, emanating minds that are the results of jhana are of their own and lower levels, but those emanating minds born from higher levels are not the lower levels result. Basically what we're saying here, you cannot make an emanating mind that would then make a result on a higher level, nor can you produce a mind of emanation on a higher level. And the reason for this is because if one has not attained the higher level, one cannot produce its emanating mind. So you cannot make an emanating mind for, if you're on the second jhana, you cannot make an emanating mind for the third or the fourth jhana. If one has attained the higher level, the emanating mind is the result of that level itself. So basically, these are the specifics of the emanating minds. So how do we get this emanating mind? What is it acquired through? It's gained like dhyan. So how is the mind of emanation required, you ask? It is gained like dhyana, by detaching yourself from lower realms. In other words, by eliminating all the afflictions and all the attachment to lower realms, then you gain the mind of dhyana of that realm that you gain. One can also acquire the emanating mind of the first jhana by being born from the second jhana into the first. So you can also gain it by birth. So for example, you perfect the second dhyana in this lifetime, the first and second dhyanas in this lifetime, and so as a result, in your next lifetime, you're born on one of the 3 levels of second dhyana, of the form, of the second level of form. Then you live there for a few eons, it's nice, and then you when you die, you're born in a lower realm, the first jhana. So at that point, you gain the emanating mind of the first jhana. So what arises from which? So how can you arise? So what the mind of emanation arises from, and what arises from the mind of emanation. So arising from the pure in self. So when you get up, what do you arise out of the meditation? I think my translation of the topics here is a little misleading. I need to take a look at this again. Basically, this is saying when you arise, which mind of what sort of a mind do you arise from? And here, the translation of the first sentence of this has actually got a big mistake in it. The translation. Here it says there is no arising directly from the mind of emanation itself. What it should say is you do one does not necessarily need to arise, or one does not arise only from the mind of emanation itself. In other words, as it says, arising from the pure in self, when you arise from the mind of emanation, you can either arise through the pure, that is the defiled, virtuous jhana, or through the mind of emanation itself. So when first manifesting a mind of emanation, that is entering a mind of emanation, the mind of emanating arises from the pure dana and also later from itself. So, I'm getting this a little confused. I think there might be a problem in this translation. I'm going to have to take a look at it, and I'll look at it again, and I'll get back to you on that tomorrow in our next class. But the emanating mind arises from the pure dana. So here in this translation, it's saying that when you arise from an emanating mind. It should say, I believe, that you arise from the emanating mind into the first pure dana, and then later also from itself. Then what arises from the mind of emanation, it's out of it is two. When abiding in a mind of emanation, there's no arising without entering samadhi. So out of it, a mind of emanation, two cognitions can arise. So you can have either two cognitions. So in the instance of arising from the mind of emanation, there's a pure jhana upon arising. And in the instance of continuation, there's the mind of emanation itself. So what happens? What this is saying is that when you are in the mind of emanation, either you can continue that emanation, which means that one moment of the mind of emanation then arises or moves into the next moment of mind of emanation, or you can arise into the pure dhyana, which is the undefiled virtuous, or the defiled virtuous dhyana. So there are no others that arise. When abiding in an emanating mind that is the result of samadhi, there is no arising from samadhi without first re-entering it. So basically, you're in meditation, in samadhi, and then when you're in samadhi and you go directly into an emanation, then before you can, you have to come back into the samadhi before you can then arise. So how the mind of emanation, how that emanates, it has three topics. So which minds of emanations emanate, minds that emanate speech, and whether minds of emanation are more or less numerous than emanations. So they're emanated by their own level. So all emanations are emanated by their own levels of emanating minds. Emanating minds of one level do not create emanations on other levels. So you are in the fourth dhyana, and you decide that you want to make an emanation on the level of desire. That means that in the fourth dhyana, you make the mind of emanating in desire, and that can create an emanation in the desire realm. But if you are in the fourth jhana and then enter the mind of emanation of the fourth jhana, you can't do an emanation on the level of desire. You can only do that mind of emanation of the fourth jhana can only do an emanation of fourth jhana. So in other words, when you want to emanate something on a lower level, then you make a mind of emanation for that lower, specifically for that particular lower level. And then there are minds that emanate speech, and this has three topics. So what mind supports emanation speaking? Distinctions in how emanations speak, and the manner of speaking through blessings. So what does this mean? What mind supporting emanation speaking, but speech by lower levels too? but in particular when the emanations of the second jhana and higher engage in speech, they speak only by the speaking mind of the lower level first jhana. So why is that? Well, it's as we discussed the other day, and also comes up in the first and second chapters. On the second through fourth jhanas, there is no considering considering or examination, these two mental factors, as it says, because above that there is no consideration or examination on their own level. So on the second jhana and higher, we don't have any consideration or examination. And if you're going to have speech, speech depends upon the motivation of consideration and analysis or examination. So this means that you, if you are on the second, third, if you have an emanation on the second, third, or fourth jhana that you want to have speak, then you have to enter the speaking mind of the first jhana in order to make it speak. The word tu means that in desire, and on the first jhana, only the mind of its own level engages in speech. So when you have a mind of desire, a mind of emanation and desire, then that mind is able to speak because on its own, it doesn't need to go into lower levels because on that level, there is consideration and analysis or examination. So that is which minds support emanation. So which of the minds of emanation support speaking. And the next is distinctions in how emanations speak. This has 2 points. With the emanator, except the actual says, with the emanator, except for the teacher. Emanations speak along with the emanator, except if they are the teacher's emanations. So in other words, except for the Buddha, say you emanate 50 other people, and you decide to say something, then you and your 50 emanations are all going to speak together. If you want to sing in a chorus, I don't know if you could sing in harmony, but you could certainly sing in unison. You know, it's like you've got but they're all together. And imagine that, it would be just perfect. Like one voice, except 51 voices, except they're all like together like one because they're all together. That's what it's saying, that basically emanations speak along with the emanator. Except if they're the teacher's emanations. The Buddha's emanations are different. They can speak on their own. So the teacher, the Buddha, can make multiple emanations speak and say different things. Now, why are we saying this? Well, it's because the long discourses, which are a set of sutras that are found in they're in Pali as well, actually. And it says there, if one speaks, then all the emanations speak. If one doesn't speak, then none of them do. So if one emanation speaks, they all speak. If one doesn't, none of them speak. But then there's a doubt. Well, when you're speaking, you have a speaking mind. And that's different than a mind of emanation. So how is it the emanation can stay there? Because you've gone from an emanating mind into a speaking mind. So how does that work? So after it's blessed, another started. The mind of emanation blesses the emanation to stay, and then another speaking mind starts speaking. Well then, when there is a mind that speaks, there is no mind of emanation. So for that reason, wouldn't the emanation would disappear, and who would speak, you'd ask? So this is saying, well, the doubt is that you make your emanation, you emanate the mouse, and if the mouse decides it wants to speak, at the moment it wants to speak, then it's going to disappear, right? Because there's no mind of emanation? No. This is not a problem, because after it, the emanation is blessed to be able to stay. Another mind, a speaking mind, starts speaking. In other words, you have the power to bless things to stay, to remain for a while you're engaging in speaking. So the manner of speaking through blessings. And so this is saying, well, there are also other mentions of this in the sutras, as it says, there are blessings for the dead as well, not for the unstable. Some say not. So in the sutras, it's taught that a corpse actually can be blessed to remain. But that isn't for the entire corpse. It's only for the stable parts, the bones, the perishable flesh and so forth do not remain. So as it says here, are blessings only for the living, or are there also blessings for the dead? You ask. There are blessings for the dead as well, which means basically blessing the corpse, which remains them to allow for a long time. because through his own blessings, the skeleton of the noble Mahakashyapa remained after his death. So there are blessings for the bones and other stable parts to remain, but not for the unstable flesh and blood and so forth, because noble Mahakashyapa did not bless his flesh and so forth. So some say that that there aren't any blessings, that couldn't have happened. There was no way that Kashyapa could have blessed his skeleton to remain. And they say that there are not any blessings for the dead, and that noble Mahakashypa's skeleton was caused to remain by the power of the gods of the pure realms. So here, this is a reference to the story of Mahakashyapa's passing away. And actually, this story is translated in full, or I don't know if it's full, but in depth, from a sutra in the Ornament of Abhidharma by Chim Jambayang, which is the other one I've been referring to from time to time. And so you can read it there. But basically, the story is that after the Buddha passed away, Mahakashyapa became the elder, or some people would translate it as a patriarch. But that sounds so patriarchal. Let's say he's an elder. He's like the elder of the teaching, the Natin. And he, the main thing that Kashyapa did during the time that he was the elder is he realized that they needed to compile all the teachings of the Buddha in order for them to remain. If no one compiled the teachings of the Buddha, then the teachings would not be able to endure for a long time. So noble Kashyapas then gathered a group of 500 arhats, and then Ananda recited the sutras. What's his name in Ghazal? The one who was the barber first. Upali, not Upali. It begins with the U. And the name, I was just looking at it 45 minutes ago, and now it's completely gone. Well, it's more than 45 minutes ago. Maybe that's why it's gone. At any rate, this the one recited the one who was remembered all the rules of the Vinaya best, whose name begins with a U, recited the text of the Vinaya, and Mahakashyapa recited all of the Abhidharma, and all 500 arhats agreed that this was that these were correct, and that this was the scriptures. And so that's how the scriptures were compiled right after the Buddha's death, or passing into nirvana, I should say. And so after that had been done, Mahakashyapa's main job was finished. And so he then appointed his successor, Rahula. Was it Rahula? My memory is not good this morning. I was just looking at this story a while ago and then not remembering. Anyways, he appointed his successor, and then he decided that it was time for him to pass away. He was already quite old, I believe. And so he went to various places and did various things. He made offerings at stupas. He made offerings at various sacred sites of the Buddha. And then he went to the place called the Bird's Foot Mountain near Bodh Gaya. And he went up there and he entered meditation. And then there are kind of three parts of the mountain. They kind of closed in inside of him. And he passed away. He lay down in the posture of a sleeping lion and passed away there. And the mountain closed around him, but his skeleton was blessed to be able to stay. So that in the future, when the Buddha Maitreya appears on this world, then the Buddha Maitreya will be able to say, here are the relics of noble Mahakashyapa. So they were blessed to be able to stay, because otherwise bones are not going to last that long. They'll generally disintegrate, but because Mahakashyapa blessed them, then these bones will be uncovered at the time of Maitreya, and Maitreya will show them. So that is the story of the Mahakashyapa. So now let's return to the text. So whether minds of emanation are more or less numerous than emanations. So we've got this mind of emanation. So basically, when you're making an emanation, there are two ways you can do it. Just to review this, there are two ways you can do it. You can either go from you're in the Samadhi of clairvoyance, and then you make an emanation directly, or you go from the Samadhi of clairvoyance into a mind of emanation. And this is the mind that produces the emanation. So it's like that's a kind of a two-step process. And when you have the mind of emanation, and when you do this, then how many minds of emanations do you need to actually produce an emanation? So this is the point here, whether minds of emanation are more or less numerous than emanations. First, many emanate the one. So first you have many minds of emanation to make one emanation. When mastered, it's the opposite. Then you can have one mind of emanation create many emanations. So as it says in the commentary, at first, many minds of emanation emanate the one emanation. Then later, when you have mastered clairvoyance, when clairvoyance has been mastered, it is the opposite. One mind creates many emanations. In other words, like a mind of emanation is like an instant, right? It's an instant of mind. So you go from the dhyana into the samadhi of clairvoyance, and then you go from that into the mind of emanation. And because you're a beginner, you have to go through a number of these minds before you finally emanate your mouse or whatever you're going to emanate. Maybe you're going to emanate a lion. And it takes many to create one. Later, when you get better, you can then go from your samadhi of clairvoyance into a mind of emanation. And that mind of emanation, then one mind will produce 50 lions or 100 lions or whatever. It's the opposite. One mind creates many emanations. So what is the essence of this mind of emanation? It's produced by meditation, neutral. But those produced by birth are threefold. So when clairvoyance isn't the only way to produce emanations. It's one way to produce emanations. So when the emanation is produced by meditation, the mind of emanation is neutral. It's not positive, or it's not virtuous, it's not unvirtuous, it's neutral. So are all minds, but those produced by birth are threefold. So those beings who, because of their birth, are able to produce emanations, such as gods and so forth, those can be either virtuous, unvirtuous, or neutral. So, as it says here, are all minds of emanation neutral, you ask? Minds of emanation produced by meditation are always neutral because they arise on lower levels. So the lower levels mind of emanation is manifest. So that's why they are neutral. It's on the lower level. But those minds of emanation produced by the attainment of one's own birth, such as those of gods, nagas, flesh eaters, or in Sanskrit, pishachi. These are the demons that eat human flesh, or so forth. They are threefold. They can be either virtuous or unvirtuous minds of emanation, or neutral, because they are produced to either help or harm another. Like a god makes an emanation to help someone else. A pishachi is going to make an emanation to harm someone else. So emanations created by gods and so forth, whether connected to their own or others' bodies, are the 9 sense bases, as they have eyes, etc. So when you have the emanation of emanation from samadhi, that doesn't have its own. What we're saying here is that doesn't have its own sensory faculties. It actually uses the emanator's sensory. It's not separate sensory faculties. When a god is creating an emanation connected to whether connected to their own or other bodies, their emanations will have the 9 sense bases of the 5 senses: the ear, eye, nose, and so forth. And also the 4 that are the same, the 4 external except for sound. So emanations created by gods and so forth, whether connected to their own or others' bodies, are the 9 sense bases, as they have eyes, etc. And the sense bases of form, excluding sound. So that would mean form, scent, taste, and touch. Emanations not connected to one's own or other bodies are only the 4 sense bases. So Now we've come to the classifications of magic, because that was emanation, so we've come to the other aspect of magic. Well, magic can happen from clairvoyance, but it can also come from other ways. So as it says, magic from mantra, medicine, and karma, 4 or 5 types, and all. So there are 5 types. So is the magic just the 2 produced by meditation and attained on birth? So we have the magic that happens through clairvoyance, and there is also the magic that is achieved on birth, like the powers of nagas or gods. And then there are also 3 additional types. So magic is produced by meditation. It is attained on birth. It is produced from mantras, such as flying in the sky because of the Gandhari mantra and so forth. Produced by meditation, such as a turtle's mane or a peacock feather. So you get you get the right substance, and then you make it's like you've got your big cauldron and you're double boiling and troubling, and you're making your magic. And then it's produced by karma, such as the miracles of Mandatara, or the beings in the between state. So these are beings who are able to produce miracles because of their karma. So there are 5 types at all. Beings in the between state can also produce magic or supernatural things. So that's the magic. And then we have the clairvoyances of divine eye and divine ear. And this has 2 points. Now, the other day I said that divine eye refers to knowing rebirth and knowing death and rebirth. And it is used for that. But I said that it was not used for similar to for the divine ear, but I was confused. I spoke incorrectly. It actually can be used for both. It's sometimes used for knowing future lives. It's sometimes used for knowing things that are far away, just as with the divine ear. And that is what we will be explaining now. So what their essence is, they are the divine eyes and ears, clear forms on levels of the dhyanas. So the divine eye and divine ear, I think that back in the day, back in India, everyone knew about divine eyes and divine ears, the ears and eyes of the gods that can see far away or hear far away and so forth. So here's the question. Are the divine ear and eye and ear only for the gods, or when the Bodhisattva wheel-wielding emperors, that is the universal Chakravartin emperors, or precious householders see many leagues, which is like the divine eye? Is that called the divine eye or not? Is that called the divine eye? Is it called the divine ear? You ask. Well, the desire realm's gods' eyes and ears are the actual divine eye and divine ear. So the gods in the desire realm can see far away. They can hear far away, just as they would see or hear close. And so that's when you talk about the actual divine eye, that's their eyes and ears. But other individuals can develop similar capabilities that are also called the same thing. So when in the equipoise of dhyana, if one trains to direct the attention to appearances in the arena of eye and ear, this creates the causes for seeing the form and hearing the sound of clear forms caused by the sources of all levels of the dhyana. So they're on the level of dhyana. In other words, it's like you're producing the ability to see or hear things that are far away, and these abilities on the level of dhyana. They're clear forms like the faculties themselves. The distinctive features is that they're always active, nothing lacking. Their sphere is distant, subtle, etc. So what's distinctive about them? They're always active. Back in the 2nd chapter, discusses how faculties are sometimes active and sometimes inactive. Active is like when they're actually functioning. Inactive is such as the eye consciousness when you are in a deep sleep. You're not seeing anything. So that's inactive. So here they're always active. You always see them. Both the divine, they are nothing lacking means that they're complete. It's not like you've got any partial blindness or partial deafness, or it's just complete faculties. And their sphere is distant, subtle, and etc. So both the divine eye and divine ear always accompany consciousness. So they are always active and never inactive. There is never any deficiency or fault. So that is to say, no distortion or no deafness. When you have the divine eye, you don't need to wear glasses. You don't need your hearing aids anymore. There's nothing lacking, just as there is with the eyes and ears of sentient beings in the form realm. In the form realm, they have the faculties are complete. They're not defective. And similarly with the divine eye and divine ear. Their sphere is the forms and sounds that are distant, that is far away, subtle, that's very small, and so forth, including the hidden. As it is said, the fleshly eye, it cannot see the distant, hidden, subtle forms, or everything. So for that reason, this is what's called the sight of God. So our regular fleshly eye, our eye made of flesh, can't see things that are far away or hidden or subtle or everything at all. So so the divine eye can see it. So that is why it's called the sight of the gods or the divine eye. Everything means not only the things that are in front, but the things that are behind, and so on or so forth. So you don't need to have eyes on your back of your head. You just need the divine eye. So how are the three individuals see with the divine eye? The Arhat, Rhino, and the teacher see 1,000 squared or cubed or countless. How many world realms can the Arhat see? How many world realms can the Prateka Buddhas, the Rhino-like Prateka Buddhas see? And how many world realms can the teacher, the Buddha, see? Well, the Arhat can see 1,000 squared. So 1,000 squared is what? It's 1,000,000. The Prateka Buddha can see 1,000 cubed, which is what? 1,000,000,000. And the Buddha can see countless, which is 10 to the 59th. So seeing lower levels with the divine eye of the first jhana and so forth has been explained. So the listeners and self-Buddhists, that is the listener Arhats and Prateka Buddhists, can see 1,000 worlds, 2,000s, 3,000s with their divine eyes. In particular, the listener Arhats, the Rhino-like self-Buddhas, and the teacher of the gods and humans, that is the Buddha. See, through the strength of effort, 1,000 squared, that is 1,000,000 worlds, or 1,000 cubed, 1,000,000,000, or countless world realms, respectively. And the teacher's depends merely upon thinking of it. He just needs to think, and then he can see. Now, the divine eye and ear, as with the gods, can be gained on birth. So here it is, understanding the nature of those obtained on birth, etc. This has two topics, the general teachings and distinctions in support. Teaching that the other four can also be attained on birth. So the other four clairvoyances can also be gained on, that four of the other clairvoyances can also be attained on birth. Others are gained on birth as well. Is magic the only clairvoyance attained on birth, or can the others be as well, you ask? It's not only magic. In other words, the others, that is the divine ear, knowing previous lives, knowing death and rebirth, and the divine eye, knowing present magic. I'm missing one. Divine eye, divine ear, knowing previous lives. Telepathy. Telepathy and so forth can also be gained on birth, but they're not produced. But since they're not produced by meditation, they are not called clairvoyance. So clairvoyance is clearly seeing. So you've got to have that clarity that comes from meditation. So they're not clairvoyance. How the divine eye attained upon birth sees. It cannot see the between state. So the divine eye that attained upon birth cannot see the between state, which can only be seen by the divine eye produced by training. In other words, if you have the divine eye that you produce through meditation, through the clairvoyances, then you can see beings that are in the between state. But beings who have the divine eye upon birth, gods or nagas or whatever, cannot see the between state. The detailed explanation of knowing minds, that is telepathy, is 3, created by the intellect and mantra 2. So knowing other minds attained upon birth, that is telepathy that you gain from being born, such as among the gods, depending upon its intention, is threefold. So it can either be virtuous, unvirtuous, or neutral. Knowing others' minds is created by the intellect from perceiving the attributes of someone's body and speech. And that created by mantra are virtuous, non-virtuous, or neutral. So they are not like the results of meditation, which are solely virtuous. In other words, there are other ways to develop telepathy, either through your intellect or through mantras, but those can be they're different than the telepathy of clairvoyance, and so they're which are solely virtuous, as opposed to being all three, virtuous, unvirtuous, and neutral. Then the distinctions in support. How beings know at first. With humans, there are not any gained on birth. So how beings know others' minds and remember previous places at the first. That is, from the moment, from the time they are born until they are agonized by feelings of suffering. So basically what this is saying is that when you were born in hell, you have telepathy and you know the minds of people around you or whatever minds you're looking at. But the big one is you remember your previous places. And in particular, what you remember are the causes that caused you to be reborn in hell. So you remember, I shouldn't have done that. Look at where it got me. And at that point, you feel intense regret because you see where you are and you see the suffering, or you feel that you're experiencing suffering there. Now, what happens in the hell realms is that at some point, the agony of the suffering gets so great that you basically lose your mind. And once they are agonized, once they've basically lost their mind because of the pain, they no longer know because they are oppressed by suffering. So the first little while that you're in the hell realm, you know what got you there, but you forget because it's so intense. So those who live among other wanderers, that means that other people who live among other destinations know permanently. So if you have the telepathy that rises on birth, and you're born as, say, a god, you have that upon birth, then you have it permanently, or as permanently for your lifetime. Of the clairvoyances that have been taught, with humans there are not any gained on birth. But there is magic that is attained by detachment, or by intellect, or by mantras, or meditations, and by karma. So in other words, as humans, we don't gain magical faculties automatically. We don't gain clairvoyances or magic, but we can occasionally do magic things or remember things because of karma. And that's the point here. But well then, how is it that some beings naturally remember their previous births, you ask? This is not attained upon birth, but it is produced by their previous karma. So the powers of karma are beyond conception. So when we have, for example, this is fairly well known these days, there are many children who remember their where they were born. And so how does that happen? It's because of their karma that they're able to remember that. As it says in the Precious Garland, for the purpose of Dharma and likewise remembering the meanings of scriptures and stainless generosity of Dharma, remembrance of lifetimes is attained. So this would also be talking about people like who naturally come in with like stories of the Bodhisattva in particular, who remembers things from previous lifetimes because of the power of karma. So that completes the main text of the chapter, and so now we're in the second part of the chapter, the second main topic, presenting the area's name. This completes the seventh area called Teachings on Wisdom from the Verses of the Treasury of Abhidharma. So this completes the explanation of the seventh area called Teachings on the Wisdom from the Explanation of the Verses of the Treasury of Abhidharma, called The Essence of the Ocean of Abhidharma, the Words of Those Who Know and Love Explaining Youthful Play, Opening the Eyes of Dharma, the Chariot of Easy Practice. And so this is the full title of Wangchuk Dorje's commentary. So Wangchuk Dorje ends the chapter with a few words of verse. The moon of speech who has perfected fully the all-knowing wisdom and compassion of the Master of 10 Powers, my glorious Master, melts in my heart into a drop whose pureness then rises to my throat as Manju's riches. So here he's speaking about his teacher, Shamar Kuntruk Yenla, comparing him to a Buddha, the master with the 10 powers. The moon of speech, he's very eloquent. And so then he rises to the throat as Manjushri's riches, in other words, as the power to speak. Thus I have gained some independent courage in all the scriptures of the infinite victors. I have no fear to teach, read, write, or debate. So because of the blessings of his guru, he feels confident to be able to write or teach or debate. By excellently bringing to a finish the seventh section of this explanation of Abhidharma, the Treasury on Wisdom, while staying in retreat and solitude in the white cave on the side of the mountain on the full moon of the winter second month, when the moon rose among the Pleiades, may the teachings of the sage remain for ages. So this is his aspiration, that by completing these, that the teachings may remain for a long time. When we have, what do we say? When we have these teachings, that the teachings that the Buddha gave in the Abhidharma, and then the teachings that then compiled by many masters over the centuries until Vasubandhu, nearly a millennium after the time of the Buddha, compiled them all into the Treasury of Abhidharma. And that's helped keep them preserve the teachings. And later masters, such as Wanchuk Dorje, composed the commentaries that then also preserve them and make them accessible to people such as ourselves. And so this is how the activity of beings like the Buddha and Vasubandhu and Wanchuk Dorje and the many other beings who have written about the Dharma, and particularly Abhidharma, have helped to stay and preserve the teachings for us to be able to use them now. So just as Wanchuk Dorje is grateful to his gurus, we also need to be grateful to our own who have been so generous in sharing this knowledge with us. So I think that is enough speaking, but I think we've got a couple questions here. Okay. There's a question about the minds of emanation. I don't understand. What is the difference between a mind of emanation and clairvoyance? So let's just go on that one more time. You enter the clairvoyance, which is a samadhi on the level of one of the dhyanas. And then from that clairvoyance, you can enter what's called a mind of emanation that then will create an emanation. So it's like a second step. So you can actually, from the samadhi itself, you could create an emanation, but you can also do it via a mind of emanation. Now, the teachings don't speak about the relative benefits of when do you want to use your mind of emanation, when do you want to use your level of samadhi. So it doesn't really express why you would sometimes go through a mind of emanation and sometimes go directly from the samadhi. That's not described in the sutras, but there are basically these two ways. So now the second question reads, if a human being following the Buddha Dharma hears the sacred statues speak, what is this in terms of this chapter subject of emanations and clairvoyance? And eliminating mental illness on the part of a sentient being. So when statues speak, that would be some sort of emanation. And of course, it's continuing on for quite a while after it's been blessed. For example, when a statue is made, and then there's a separation of time before it speaks. Or how it works, I'm not exactly certain on that one. In terms of the subject of emanations and clairvoyance, it would be an emanation that is connected with someone else's, with another continuum, the continuum of that statue. So then making that statue speak. So I'm not certain I can give any more specific. And in terms of eliminating illness on the part of the human being, I mean, I think that it's possible that a great being might see that making making an emanation would be able to benefit someone, to help calm them or assuage their fear or so forth. And what kind of karma allows a human being to remember on before birth, if this is okay to ask? If it's okay to ask, but it probably wouldn't be okay for me to give an answer, because I can't say, well, if you are generous, then you're going to get, it says, if you are generous, that you're going to be reborn in a situation of plenty. That's clear in the scriptures, but they don't exactly say, well, if you do X, then you will be clairvoyant in your next lifetime. So I'm not going to be able to really say about that. And then the last question for today is that moons are used as an analogy in many teachings. For examples of water moons and finger pointing at moons, the moon of speech, or the moon as a symbol of bodhichitta or whatever. When you use an analogy, you want to use something that people know, that people see, and that they can understand. And so, especially before people started living in cities with bright electric lights, moons were like something you saw all the time. These days, we ignore them because we're inside in our electric lights once the sun goes down. We don't really see them. But in pre-modern, before not too long ago, the moon was a really important part of life. And so that's. I think that's just like using an example. You want it, when you use an analogy, use something that people know. So this is why when we talk about, in the Indian tradition, when they talk about logic, that when they want to use an example of a material object, what do they say? A jug. Why do they say a jug? It's because you're always using the jug to drink water, right? So nowadays, instead, we'd say a cup or a glass. right? Because it would give the same thing. You use the analogy that people know. And then each different analogy, specific analogy, has different reasons that go along with those specific analogies. Okay, so I think that is enough for this morning's class. We have completed the 7th area, and we will begin the 8th area tomorrow. So now let's please dedicate the merit of teaching and listening to the Dharma as a representative of all the Dharma that any sentient being has accumulated in the 3 times. And let us dedicate it all so that all sentient beings may swiftly be freed from suffering and travel down the path to achieve states of temporary and then perfect happiness. So thinking in this way, let's please recite the dedication prayers. O sonam de tam je se pani tom ne nye beranam pam chete Kegana chi balong trubai Si petole ro kunyo. By this merit may we attain omniscience, defeat the enemy, wrongdoing, and free all beings swiftly from the ocean of existence, churned by great waves of birth, age, sickness, and death. Chanchup samcho rimboje ma ke panam ke juruchi ke pa nyamba me parya gong ne gong du pelwa sho. May Bodhichitta, great and precious, arise in those who have not roused it, never weakening in those who have. May it grow ever stronger and stronger. Okay, thank you very much.